From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has held a news conference regarding the attack on the state's electricity provision. He said Venezuela could be the first country to receive an attack of this kind and blamed the United States for the aggression.
The U.S. government ordered this attack in the moment they saw that all its attempts to attack Venezuela had failed. They came with a criminal strategy made by criminal minds who have already been in wars such as those in Iraq, Syria and Afghanistan. Only criminal minds think about hurting people. They ordered this attack because they thought that the Venezuelan people would surrender. But on the contrary, the Venezuelan people resisted.
In the wake of the attack, the Venezuelan president also said the government has provided food and basic services for citizens.
The government is attending to all the needs for food and water in the middle of this emergency and situation which we're facing. The main thing is to progressively recover the electricity system. Meanwhile, we have been providing security services to protect peace and citizens.
President Maduro went on to praise workers of the National State Power Company for their professionalism after the cybernetic attack on Venezuela's electricity service.
We're advancing thanks to the workers and professionals at Corpoelec. I want to offer them the recognition of the whole country for their ability, experience and professionalism. At each power station there are workers with 20, 25, even 30 years of experience. An attack with these characteristics may be very difficult for any other country to cope with. Maybe they would have had no idea what was going on. But in record time, we managed to identify that it was a cybernetic attack and liberate the brain of Corpoelec. We were able to, step by step, neutralize the electromagnetic attacks on communication systems, and we managed to prevent physical attacks on power stations because of the armed forces.
President Maduro added that while sustainable progress is being made, fresh attacks have been stopping efforts to return electricity service to normal.
In the last 24 hours, we've been moving forward in a consecutive and sustained manner. In the last 24 hours, we've advanced, dissipating problems. At times, we brought energy back to a city or state and immediately suffered an attack or problem and lost power. But we've returned and we've achieved it. There are still places in the country where energy hasn't been stabilized, but a high percentage of the country has been reincorporated into the national electricity system. I hope that in the coming hours we can advance further and in a sustainable way.
The president of Venezuela confirmed that 2 people have been caught trying to conduct further sabotage as Venezuela looks to return electricity to the whole country.
We captured 2 individuals who were trying to sabotage the communication system from Guyana to Guiri. They were captured in the act and now they're in jail. They're speaking to us, and I say not just to the intellectual authors of this unexpected attack, but also to the Venezuelan justice system. Let's take down the people that arranged this attack on law, life and peace.
Meanwhile, Venezuela's Vice Minister of Planning, Ricardo Menéndez, says attacks against the electrical network continue as the government tries to recover the system.
While all the actions are taken to reestablish the electrical service, attacks continue to happen. This is an aspect that with the pass of time, we will be able to see all the history of attacks on the electrical system. However, independent of these aggressions against the electrical system, we have a stance which is to restore the full functioning of the electrical system, and at the same time, to commit to all those tasks that are indispensable for the Venezuelan population.
Venezuelan officials have received a team from the Office of the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights. Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza held a coordination meeting which provided information on the human rights and social policies in Venezuela. Government institutions and public authorities will be receiving members of the UN team in the coming days. And workers at the National Electrical Corporation continued their work following the sabotage of the country's main power generator. We have more in this report.
Analyst Vladimir Adrianza says Venezuelans are resisting an international scare that seeks to break the peace and sovereignty of the country through unsettling acts like this recent attack to the national electrical system.
Evidently, it had to have done in two ways. The fact that Marco Rubio knew about it appears as indisputable evidence that he knew what was happening. There was external collaboration.
A cybernetic attack on the automated control of the GURI system that supplies energy to the country is an act of aggression against the people of Venezuela. For the government of Venezuela, this is yet another component of the unsettling plan to destabilize the country.
To leave a whole country without electrical service, to leave all hospitals without power. Thank God the power plants worked. What they are saying about 79 deaths is false. While Marco Rubio was mocking the situation, we were transferring children to other hospitals.
Despite the problems caused by electrical sabotage, there is peace in Caracas. The people denounce that they are the victims of an attack from the outside.
It looks like a coup, this attack on the telecommunications. Today we have a problem and we are all affected. It won't be easy. The attacks will continue, there will be stronger attacks. We should know that if there's a war, it will be worse.
From the streets, you can see the Venezuelans are facing these challenges with civility and calm, while the national government continues to work towards the restoration of all the electricity.
Cuba has rejected U.S. claims that it has thousands of troops stationed in Venezuela. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez said Cuba abides by the principles of sovereignty and non-interference in internal affairs of other countries. He added that the allegations are part of a scheme to discredit the legitimate government of Venezuela and that the U.S. has a history of endless lying, which has led to devastating consequences in the past. The Cuban government also denounced the U.S. State Department's decision to add more Cuban entities to a list of organizations under United States sanctions. The government reiterated the economic blockade on Cuba is arbitrary and contravenes international law. The United Nations General Assembly has on several occasions voted overwhelmingly to end the economic blockade on Cuba. The United Nations has highlighted the importance of the special jurisdiction for peace to maintain peace in Colombia and protect the victims of the internal conflict. The UN mission in the country has lamented that the special jurisdiction still doesn't have a legal regularity framework, despite the fact that the peace agreement was signed more than 2 years ago. It also asks that the President Iván Duque respects the peace agreement and the independence for the special jurisdiction for peace be respected. On Sunday, Duque returned the peace legislations to Congress after objecting to 6 of the 159 articles of the law. We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us.
From here to beyond the South, from here to the Caribbean or further north, where can I see news connecting the whole South? From Washington, from Mexico, from Caracas, from Quito, from Havana. You can always see the news from a new vision, connecting the global South. Only on Telesur.
Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has marked his first 100 days in office. During his speech at the National Palace in Mexico City, López Obrador said his government will continue its fight against corruption. He also said there is no hint of economic recession, despite what his opponents might say.
The economy, fortunately, is moving. It grows a little, but without a hint of recession, as many conservative opponents might want. We have confirmed during this 100 days period that if you fight corruption and govern with austerity, an economic growth can be obtained. This is what we will demonstrate.
The Peruvian President Martín Vizcarra has sworn in his new Prime Minister, former actor Salvador del Solar. The new ministerial cabinet has also been sworn in with 9 changes made. This comes after the former Prime Minister César Villanueva resigned from his post on Saturday. The President of the Ecuadorian National Assembly, Elizabeth Cabezas, has been accused of blocking a corruption probe into President Lenín Moreno. Lawmaker Ronnie Aliaga denounced the Assembly head at the prosecutor's office for abuse of power. A conversation between Cabezas and the Interior Minister Maria Paula Romo was leaked, where Cabezas spoke about voting session to decide on the investigation. The president and his family had been allegedly linked to the 2 offshore companies.
There must be an investigation to know if there was an abuse of power. I take the word of the Social Christian Party that said it will support us in our proposal of having a debate in the National Assembly about opening an investigation into the President, Lenín Moreno.
I don't hold on to my position. I think if anyone has to lose something, that is the country. If we keep paying attention to all the scandals of this country, we will not do anything else. I believe that our responsibility of the ones who are in charge of the country is to talk about topics that are framed within the Constitution.
And the International Monetary Fund has approved a $4.2 billion loan for Ecuador. The decision was announced by Ecuador's Finance Minister Richard Martinez, who also added that the IMF will make an initial disbursement of more than $600 million. In a statement, the head of the international body, Christine Lagarde, said that the government is already preparing a reform package, which is part of the agreement. At least 12 people have died and several others are missing as heavy rains and flooding hit the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo. Many roads have been blocked due to landslides. Many vehicles, including public buses, have been left submerged in water, and more rain is forecast. Our correspondent Brian Meir has the latest.
Starting around 9 p.m. on the night of March 10th, São Paulo was pummeled by its worst rainstorm in recent history. Major highways have been flooded out and are still shut down today, like Marginal Tietê and Rodovia Anchieta. Thousands of people have been flooded out of their homes, many waiting on rooftops to be rescued by the fire department. People are traveling around on boats. On some streets, hundreds of cars were destroyed, some buildings were destroyed. There have been landslides. It's just a sign of disrespect from the state government of São Paulo, which privatized 49% of the state water company in the 1990s. And since then, instead of using profits to improve infrastructure and improve flood control, they've been rerouted to the New York Stock Exchange. I myself got caught up in the tumult last night as I was leaving a baby shower with my family in São Bernardo do Campo. It took over 2 hours to get home, as roads were closed, highways were shut down from the rain, and I feel lucky that we didn't get caught in a major flood, like so many other residents of this city.
Algeria's President Abdelaziz Bouteflika has announced that he won't be running for a 5th term. In a statement, he also confirmed that presidential elections scheduled for April will be postponed. A government reshuffle will also take place soon. The news comes after weeks of protests against another run by the allied 4th-term president. Meanwhile, thousands of Algerians took to the streets in celebration immediately after Bouteflika's decision was announced. People from all walks of life, young and old, joined jumping up and down with excitement. Cars beeped their horns in approval.
It's a good thing, but only if they change the government completely. If they bring someone just like him, it's not worth it. They have to change the whole government.
Organization in Morocco has confirmed that the government's decision to allow Israeli athletes to compete in a judo competition last weekend. The Moroccan Observatory Against Normalization said the decision by the government was an injustice to the people of Palestine, who continue to live under difficult circumstances due to the Israeli occupation. It added that it will continue to firmly oppose any normalization of relations between Morocco and Israel. An airstrike by the U.S.-led coalition in Syria has reportedly killed 50 civilians, mostly women and children. The attack came as U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, continued their assault on al-Baghosh, the last village in Syria held by the Islamic State group. According to the Syrian news agency SANA, the civilian deaths happened at a camp near the village. Progressive and dissident voices continue to be silenced in the U.S. Congress, especially when they question the country's foreign policy. Our correspondent Alina Duarte tells us more.
A woman, Muslim, black, and a Somalian civil war refugee who lived in a camp in Kenya. Today, Ilhan Omar has a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. She's also considered one of the most progressive legislators in the chamber, and her voice makes Washington nervous.
That is a ridiculous question, and I
yes or no?
No.
She's brought to light the influence that Israeli lobby AIPAC has in both public affairs and political life in the United States. Doing so has generated a campaign against her.
The anxiety here that's being raised is not about the concern for Jewish life, but is about the concern for Israel's viability as an apartheid state, continuing and entrenching its settler colonial encroachment. And the United States has been the leader of that effort.
The media campaign against the legislator treats criticism of Israeli politics as an attack on the Jewish community.
Criticizing Israel does not mean you criticize the Jewish people. We reject anti-Semitism just as we reject Islamophobia. Both are unacceptable. The criticism of Israel doesn't have to do with Semitism or anti-Semitism. This has to do with human rights and the human rights to treat both people equally.
Omar doesn't get much backing, even from her own side. Even Democratic Socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has become something of a media sensation, hasn't been very clear or has kept her silence regarding Omar. Meanwhile, more veteran Democrats have tried to control the situation.
What Congresswoman Omar said, I thought was wrong and hurtful. But I also want to say that what happened linking all Muslims to the terrorist attack was wrong and hurtful, and both should be condemned.
Is laid on the table.
Even though the result of this controversy saw a declaration against all kinds of hate, which Omar signed, for the press and for Congress, an anti-Muslim poster that associated the Congresswoman with the terrorist attacks of September 11th went almost unnoticed. In the same vein, the report from the United Nations Independent Commission of Human Rights saying that there were reasonable motives to believe that Israeli security forces committed grave violations of human rights and international law was largely ignored. In 2018, the Israeli army has shot at children and journalists during the Great March of Returning Gaza, killing 189 Palestinians, 35 of them just children. The number of hate groups that exist in the United States is alarming. According to the Center of Legal Studies on Poverty in the Southeast, in the year 2018, there were 1,020 such groups, of which 100 were anti-Muslim, 148 white nationalist, 112 neo-Nazi, and 51 Ku Klux Klan cells.
Alina Duarte, Telesur, Washington, D.C.
More news in a minute. Stay with us.
Enjoy the best content in spaces where you will discover new perspectives. Innovation. Well-being. Conservation. Equity. Traditions. A wide variety of contents that you will find on Telesur, the news source of Latin America and the Caribbean.
Sudan's parliament has voted to shorten a state of emergency declared by President Omar al-Bashir last month from 1 year to 6 months. Last month, Bashir declared the nationwide state of emergency in an attempt to quell persistent protests that rocked the nation since December last year. The protests erupted after a government decision to triple the price of bread. They, however, quickly escalated into nationwide rallies calling for Bashir to step down. At least 40 people have been killed and around 150,000 displaced by floods in Mozambique. Thousands have been moved into temporary shelter. Aid workers are working to prevent a pandemic of cholera and diarrhea. Ethiopian state TV says authorities have found the black box from the Ethiopian Airlines flight that crashed on Sunday. However, an airline official says the box is partially damaged. The Boeing 737 MAX 8 crashed minutes after taking off, killing all the 157 people on board. A moment of silence was held for the victims at the UN Environment Assembly in Nairobi. 22 UN employees were among those killed in the crash. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has vowed to protest against the increase in electricity tariffs. In a press statement, the union said the tariff increase by the state power company will be disastrous for the working class, who are already struggling to pay electricity. It added that the increase will also negatively affect the nation's industry and lead to redundancies. South Africa is counting down to its 5th general election since the dawn of democracy in 1994. Latest polls show that the ruling African National Congress will suffer some losses compared to previous years, but the party has intensified its election campaign.
South Africa's president and ruling party leader Cyril Ramaphosa has been on an intensified campaign trail ahead of the 2019 May elections. The party he is leading has resonated with a majority of South Africans since 1994, assured of landslide victory every election. If the recent polls are anything to go by, the ANC remains a favorite to win the elections, but with lower numbers. Its support base remains at grassroots level, where the people still see the party as the liberator.
We said to the people of South Africa, for one day that DA will be in government.
But in more urban areas, the battle for votes is tense. The official opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, is after votes from a disgruntled middle class. The party has been running the Western Cape province and is now gunning for the economic capital, Gauteng.
Over again what the DA can and
While the ANC is using its 25-year track record as the governing party, opposition parties are poking holes using corruption scandals that have emerged over the past 2.5 decades. President Cyril Ramaphosa, a billionaire who left politics in 1997 to amass his wealth, is now seen as the new face of ANC politics, although he's seen by some of his comrades as a sponsor of a capitalist system run mostly by white men who control the economy. Political commentary suggests that the ANC will need smaller parties to form coalitions in key provinces. Matuba Mahlachi, Telesur, Mpumalanga Province.
The President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, and the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, have agreed on a new legally binding instrument that gives more guarantees to both parties on the Irish safeguard. Now it is up to the British Parliament to pass the deal.
Let us speak crystal clear about the choice. It is this deal or Brexit might not happen at all. Faced with this stark reality, members of the House of Commons have a deep responsibility and a fundamental choice to make.
Legally binding changes, which is exactly what Parliament asked us to secure. And what we have secured is very clearly that the backstop cannot be indefinite, cannot become permanent. It is only temporary, if it is the case that we were ever to get into the backstop.
And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.